The people in our group here who have messed with it at all.
Hmm.
I know Tim in Chicago is doing some work with it. Have you heard anybody else working with it, Sue?
There's lots of people on the forum that are messing with, are thinking about it. There's actually, it was interesting because I did that forum post, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of people responded to it. So there's a huge interest in iBeacon.
It's the whole Big Brother, like, uh-oh, people are watching me idea.
Yeah. There's some negative things too, but I saw a really nice video on it being done in schools. That did you send it to me, Brian? But yeah, I saw it. There's a really nice video how schools can use it for like a learning zone. That was really cool to see.
And there's I think part of the biggest challenge with just this concept overall is that it seems relatively simple to get your head around, right? Hey, let's just know when we're in a particular region or a particular zone or whatever. But I
Mhm.
think the biggest challenge is going to be balancing just an explosion of creativity, like all the different things you could possibly do with it. And I think that people may get a little overboard and trying to do too much with it in the early days. I'm not sure. This is just speculation on my part. Like, I'm in a school and a classroom environment makes perfect sense. I'm thinking of like check-in environments when people arrive at work and clocking them in, and there's all kinds of this kind of an endless possibility of what it can do. The classic tour guide example where you're walking through the park and it talks to you through the place. There's all kinds of that stuff which
Mhm.
we've been able to do with location manager stuff to some degree, but nothing like this accurate, nothing like this fast, and nothing like this, magical, really. So, yeah, today we're just gonna have a talk about it. So whenever you're ready to kind of kick us off.
Oh, I already started recording, so we
Oh,
already
you
are.
did.
So
Okay.
we're already.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna lead a discussion today with a little bit of code and a little bit of just kind of conversation around what the heck we can do with these kinds of things. And I think a lot of people are going to come up with ideas just in this talk. I've got an Android shirt on today, not because this has anything to Android, but because I just have to. Because I can't be a hater all the time, right? I gotta show some love every now and then,
Mhm.
which is which is a whole nother deal. So am I sharing my screen already?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So let's I just got this little note sheet in front of us. We'll just use this as a little guideline today, and we'll kind of go from there. And so, what is it? iBeacons. I think the name itself says it all, right? I think there's little confusion about the overall concept in terms of what it is. They announced it last year at WWDC and said with iOS 7 this was going to come out, and only now are you seeing people mess with it. But really, it's just a marriage between two devices, two gadgets. Certainly, we can talk about more than one gadget, but in essence, you've got one thing transmitting and one receiving. And so that thing that's transmitting does not necessarily have to be an iOS device. It can be. For example, you could set up an iPad to be a transmitter, or you could set up a dedicated device to be a transmitter. But in essence, one thing's sending a beacon, sending a signal, and then another gadget is listening for that. That's really what we're talking about here. And I think in all of our minds, in most cases, we're going to be talking about lots of devices listening to one thing transmitting. So back to Brian's classroom example, that makes perfect sense, right? You've got a beacon in a classroom, sending a signal, a beacon, and you've got a bunch of students running an app that are listening, and something magical happens when they get in that zone or that. I like to call it a geofence, although that word's getting quickly dated because geo doesn't necessarily refer, in my mind, to like indoor type stuff or real close proximity. I think geofencing to me is a broader conversation, which we could go off on that tangent all we want, but that's not really the purpose of iBeacons. And so when you're setting up beacons and we're talking about transmitting things, you're talking about groups of beacons, minor and major they call them, or major and minor beacons. Really what in your source code and in your project, you're going to be setting up generally one major beacon and then a lot of minor beacons that are part of that bigger group. And so back to the school example, you might have one major school beacon with a bunch of minor beacons in individual classrooms. And they're all part of that bigger group. So iOS is calling those, or Apple is calling those major and minor. The iOS projects that you work with, they're using pretty standard technologies, core location, core Bluetooth. It's got to be a Bluetooth enabled gadget. This is very Bluetooth dependent. I'm not a huge, I don't have a whole ton of experience with Bluetooth, but I always think of Bluetooth and I think of battery consumption. You know, I don't know how bad it is on battery, but my mind jumps right to kind of a battery hog when you talk about Bluetooth, but maybe I'm just exaggerating. I mean, Brian's shaking his head, but maybe I'm wrong there. I think, you know, he's saying four. Four what? Yeah, maybe we can unmute Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
It's the fourth generation of Bluetooth operating only in, I think, it's the fourth generation of Bluetooth, so it's only running on iPad 4 and later.
Yeah, there you go. So probably dependent on, you know, as time goes on. Is it fourth gen? I thought we were fifth gen now, Bluetooth. It's getting better and better and better is the point. You know, low power consumption, all that. But I'm just saying in my head, you know, old school guy, as soon as I see certain things, I think better. Bluetooth, core location, you know, certain chat apps, you know, they just drain it all down. But I'm guessing it's all relative to everything else. But anyway, that's kind of how we got on that. So really when we talk about code, there's really three core objects that are working together to kind of make this happen in a typical project. And so you've got a beacon region, which defines kind of the area that we're talking about. You've got a peripheral manager, which is kind of a device that kind of, you know, receives all this information about location in the region. Has it entered the region? Has it exited the region? All these kinds of things. So you have this peripheral manager that kind of juggles all that information. And then you have your core location. Core location is, which I probably should have put right here, core location. Core location is the same core location kind of object that lots of us are already used to. It's kind of rolled into core location in terms of apps that already exist, right? You got a lot of code that's listening for updates to the location and all that kind of stuff. So iBeacon uses core location also. I've got three references here if you want to, we'll probably just share this document when we're done, but you can go to these reference documents. I'm going to do that right now. And you can just read the overview of each of these, right? You know, what is a beacon region? And it simply tells you right here in pretty good English. I mean, Apple does a pretty good job of describing what that object does. And you can go to each of these and see what the peripheral manager does and the location manager. But I would encourage you, of course, to start at the CL beacon region document and just kind of browse through this and try to understand how do you initialize one, how do you send transmissions, all of that kind of stuff. And so in most of the stuff that you're going to find online, most of the tutorials and most of the kind of beginning examples of this, most people are setting up one iOS. They're using two iOS devices. They're using, and they're kind of building two test apps, really. They're using one gadget to send, and imagine it's sitting in a building or a room or something, or, you know, by the, you know, along the tour route or whatever. And then they're using another one as the receiver. So they're kind of going with two apps as they work this out. And so another way to, you might not necessarily pick up on this, but really you do need two gadgets now to play, to test, to develop, to understand what's going on. You are going to need two separate devices running. I guess in theory you could build two apps, one a sender and one a receiver, and run them both at the same time on the same phone, but I don't think you'd have much luck with trying. You know, I think you're probably going to be better off, you know, picking up a couple of gadgets to do this with. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting, and maybe most interesting, is because you can transmit from a device right away, that also means that the device doesn't need to be in the same place all the time. I think people think of beacons as a fixed object, you know, in a class or in a hotel or in a business, where if your device is transmitting and moving, well, then it becomes a whole new kind of opportunity for creativity, right? Because imagine some people using your app being transmitters and some people using your app being receivers. It can get kind of interesting as you think about what's going to happen. Think about like these classic Who's Near Me apps. You know, in the past, these are location manager driven, GPS driven, not very accurate. Now you can do these kind of hypersensitive Who's Near Me apps if you're broadcasting this Bluetooth stuff. Kind of cool. And that actually isn't that new either if you think about it in the context of pairing up devices like for a game, find people around me to play a game or to share a game through the same old Bluetooth kind of connection. That's been around for a while, but not in the context of, always on, running in the background, these kinds of things. No user interaction necessary to marry these devices together in our code. So it's just kind of an extension of existing technologies, made better, really. Location's been around, Bluetooth's been around. Let's take those things together. And if you're Apple, let's see what happens if we take those things together and offer the developers an opportunity to kind of get creative. So that's kind of cool. I've got some code here. I'm just going to step through. I'll step through that. We've got 2 class files going. Let me show you. I'll put some lines in between here so you can see what I've done. We'll put a line here. And a line here, a line here, and a line here. Basically, I've just got a bunch of code for 2 class files, which would mean 4 files, right? 2.h's and 2.m's. So in the first example here, I'm calling this, my view controller. And this would be the interface for my view controller. So we're just going to set up some properties, and you could build a simple little app with one screen that would become the beacon, the transmitter. And so the transmitter app or object in an iOS gadget, in my opinion, would be quite a bit less complicated than the one receiving, because really you're just saying, hey, start a beacon, turn it on, broadcast. That would be a simple little app with like a one view controller example. So I've got a view controller that is listening for peripheral manager updates, and we'll get to that in a sec. It's got a property here for a beacon. We've got 4 labels that you can throw on the screen, like in the view. One's going to show us the unique ID, the major and minor information, identity, and that'll make more sense here in a sec. Got a little NS dictionary to hold all this data as it listens for and understands who's in its region, what devices are connected to me, so to speak. And then I've got a peripheral manager object here. So this would be a simple little interface to declare these properties. And then in our .m file, we've got 6 or 7 methods here, not very complicated. When the view loaded up, we would initialize our beacon. And then in my magical pretend UI, I would update the UI, which doesn't do anything other than set the labels to show us on our little test app here, what's happening with my beacon. And imagine a view that you're staring at and looking at. And so when we initialize our beacon here, it takes some arguments, takes a unique identifier for our beacon. It takes a label that we can refer to in code on other gadgets. Updating the UI is just, again, it's a simple method that's going to show us the UI of our beacon, or the unique ID of our beacon, and show us the information that we already set up so we can see it on the screen. And then we're going to start listening to devices that are in our region. We probably wouldn't transmit beacon information. And in this simple example, I would hook it to a button. Maybe there's a button on the screen, and I tap the button and it starts transmitting. So when we launch this transmit beacon method, we would actually start, quote, sending signals to the listening devices. And then this is our little power manager, and we would pay attention to when data is being received by it. So that's a pretty simple class that would send, let me put another line down here so we know what the end is, that would set up an iOS device as a transmitter. Simple little concept. So I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any comments? Text them in here if you want about the idea of transmitting. It's pretty simple, actually, but there's a world of questions that may arise from that. But we can. I'm looking at the chat here. Sue, do you have any remarks about transmitting?
Well, most of the chat's been about the price of the beacons and then which devices.
Well, the price of the beacons, you must be thinking about people building hardware that can be set up as beacons.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting conversation. I mean, there's a few startups that are kind of taking off right now, like Estimote's one that's like little gadgets that you can set up as iBeacons, and that makes a lot of sense. Really, all you have to have is a Bluetooth-enabled device that understands this technology. And so, I don't think people are going to be buying these gadgets as testing devices. Maybe I'm wrong. I wouldn't. I would use phones. I mean, I've got a pile of gadgets around here that are iOS devices. I would just use those. But I think in a classic business, yeah, you might, if you're doing this for money, you might need to understand some of the hardware that's out there, like these little tiny widgets that you can place throughout different regions and different places. Brian, maybe unmute yourself again and tell us, like, have you seen this in a school? What are they using? Are they using iOS devices as transmitters, or are they using other dedicated hardware?
The three most popular are Estimote beacons, Gimbal, because Gimbal has its own app, and then Rad beacons.
So they're separate pieces of hardware that schools are buying and placing around the classrooms.
Yes, Estimote and Gimbal are battery-powered Bluetooth devices.
Got it.
The Rad beacons are just a little Bluetooth dongle that plugs into a USB brick and plugs into a wall.
Got it. Yeah. So once again, here's the crazy creativity, right? 3 companies didn't exist a year ago. Now they exist. I'm making some assumptions here because I don't know much about them, but boom, all of a sudden, a world of opportunity, right? And so maybe if they're a couple of $100, I'm guessing you can probably jump on eBay and snag them up for half that. I don't know. I'm speculating here, but that's just the beginning of what might be $5 or $10 down the road. I don't know.
They're
Pretty
about
cool.
They're about $30 a piece right now.
Yeah, already, right? In a year or whatever, in 7 months or something. It's awesome. That's awesome. And so with these gadgets, I'm guessing, Brian, that you go to a web-based interface to configure them or something. Is that how that works?
No, just like in the tutorials, there are 2 apps. One app to configure, and then
Got
one
it.
app to receive.
Got
And the discussions I've had with some of my ADE colleagues is that this is the perfect platform. And if I understand what Tim was talking about for the plugin he's developing, is that his plugin would handle both. So you'd have one screen to manage and configure the beacons and one to receive, which from a teaching standpoint would be much better for the teacher to use because you're only looking at one app. And then the discussion I've had is we could password protect through a login screen the configuration so that even if the kid has the app, they can't get to that.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And again, my mind just goes wild with because I was kind of, raised in a database mindset. I'm always trying to marry control panels and cloud and remote configuration with the app. That's just kind of something I've always been a fan of. And so I can imagine, are you messing with these little gadgets? Are you messing with the size of the region? I mean, how are you adjusting these things?
I'm not doing anything.
Okay, got it. I've not bought one yet. So
I have a colleague, 2 of them in New Zealand and 1 in Australia that are using them, and I can send you a link to a video if you'd like.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just a matter of, I've looked at code and married it to a UI. In fact, I was in Italy last week and we were doing a little bit of exactly this topic. And these Italian dudes are like going crazy over, iBeacon, and it was kind of fun. It was a fun little conversation that we had, and we quickly stored a bunch of coordinates in a database, sent them to the device that was the beacon, and then tried to minimize the effects of. You don't necessarily care in all cases. Let's say that one of these little gadgets broadcasts to whatever 100 feet. I don't know what the hardware does, but let's just say 100 feet, and there's a 100-foot circle around this gadget that you fill in a classroom or something. Well, you might want to know not just when somebody's in that range, but you might want to know how far exactly are they from that range. And so your code would need to understand, like, what do I do when a student approaches the desk versus what do I do when a student enters the room. And so these are the kinds of information that I think are perfect for kind of dynamic type thinking so that you can control these results and you can control what happens in your app when certain thresholds are crossed. And so that's the kind of experimenting we were doing last week where we were literally like shrinking the circle, right? And I got all carried away for a couple hours trying to make a cool little UI, in a browser to where you could drag the size of the circle around the beacon so that you can visually see how far the thing is going to react or whatever. But super fun. Let's move on a little bit. And that's a simple little classic, how do I use an iOS device to broadcast? And then we can go down here, and I'll put another little lines. And now we have another interface for an object. I'm just calling it my listener view controller. This would be the other end of the spectrum, on the gadget that's listening to, looking for, finding beacons. And so the same kind of thing, we've got accuracy and distance and some labels on the screen where we can measure how far we are from that beacon. So we've got 6 or 7 properties here. You'll see that we're honoring the location manager delegate, so we want to listen to location updates, things like that. And then this code is a little longer. There's 6 or 7 methods, but it's a little bit longer. This big ugly chunk right here is the core of it. And this tells us, when our range changes, our location manager is going to tell us when our range changes. And we can show on the UI, on the labels, I've just got a bunch of labels, how far, how the proximity, near, far, the results on the screen. And so, again, super simple. We launch this view controller. We turn on a location manager. We tell the location manager that this class file is listening to its updates. And these are the location manager delegate methods, did start monitoring. These are the classic ones. All that kind of stuff is kind of the same. And so, really, I think the discussion for this kind of conversation is less about code, because certainly everybody's just going to be copying and pasting from pick your tutorial, right? It's the same stuff. And more about ideas like Tim's talking about with this plugin. What does the plugin do? How awesome is it? Does it drink battery? Does it rely on a piece of hardware like one of these third-party pieces? That kind of stuff. I don't know. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a 30-minute conversation around iBeacon and what you might do with it. Sue, where do you think we ought to take this conversation from here?
Well, you're asking me. Well, I do have this little subgroup I was going to have trying to help Tim with his plugin. I'm trying to see if we can move things along a little faster at Buzztouch. I really don't know. I don't really know what the next step is.
Okay.
But it'd be great if we could actually have like a way to have Buzztouch be at the center of this new technology and have, and take advantage of the fact that we kind of have this group of educators that use Buzztouch and
Sure.
have the expertise and then have the interest in it. We could actually really deploy something like this, and it could be good to Buzztouch and good for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I think it'd be pretty easy to jump to, let's throw this in the control panel and make it a part of your app, kind of the core settings.
Oh,
Put your beacon ID in here and drag the circle and do all these kinds of things.
mm-hmm.
And that would make sense. On the other hand, people like Tim and other people making these view controllers, they may be much more creative than that. And they may be much more focused on making that part of their project awesome, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it is exciting. The other thing that we have to be real sensitive to is we're trying to do what we do on both platforms, right? And so I have zero understanding or experience yet with the counterpart in Android. Maybe somebody can speak up in our meeting. There's got to be something similar to this. If not, I mean, it's ripe for being made. And so then we would have to look into, okay, what do we do in Android world? Right? Are these little gadgets just iOS? I mean, Android's got Bluetooth, same thing.
Well, I think there is some Android. I think I read as 4.3 and after devices have the technology that they could actually be a receiver. I think. Anyone
Yeah,
know?
but let's think about this logically. I mean, if all you need to be a receiver is Bluetooth,
Yeah.
why wouldn't an Android device that already has Bluetooth just be able to pick up this signal?
Yeah. Exactly.
Check out the discussion.
Yeah, Smug saying
Kids,
an Android
kids said
device can do the beacon thing. Yeah, so I think this group is kind of iOS centric, which is fine. I think we all kind of tend to gravitate there because it's less mysterious to begin with, but I'm pretty darn certain that it's going to be nearly the same logic. Connected, put it on the UI, what happens when I get in the zone? Really, that's what we're talking about. I'd like to think about what can happen when you get in the circle.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of crazy stuff can happen, but are we just talking about playing a movie or showing them a learning path, in a school? Or are we talking about, telling the principal that somebody's in an off limits area. You know, you're not supposed to be in the swimming pool between 8 and 5. So if you think about these rules around what you can do, you know, you definitely need a way to manage all this stuff. It's one thing to just throw a little beacon in the middle of the room and say, okay, when you come into class, this is going to happen. But it's another thing altogether to get more the next level of sophisticated and say, okay, wait a minute, we can associate times of day, we can associate users. Some users are allowed in here and some users aren't, right? All these kinds of fascinating things that really come alive when you're talking about a database and rules that you can apply to that plugin that's listening. And so, you know, that's the kind of creativity that I think of. Think about an airport. Think about an airport. I arrive in the airport, the airliner knows I'm there. Today, we're close to that when I scan my little phone and I type in my name and I auto check in myself. But that's not the same thing, right? I'm waiting in line. I don't want to be in line. I just want to be there. So, hey, I'm here. Maybe the iBeacon's got to be smart now to know who I am and what time of day I am and all these different kinds of really cool creative opportunities. That's where I get excited.
Hey, going back to Android for a second, because of the public nature of what iBeacon is and how it's meant to work with the general public, it really is going to be very. I know in the schools are very iPad focused, so that's a different answer. But for business, it's going to have to be both Android and iOS. It has to be.
And it's going to have to be somehow configurable, right? It's one thing to tell a customer, hey, I'm making you an app with iBeacon.
Yeah.
The next thing out of the customer's mouth is going to be, okay, what does that do? And everything's going to change as that development rolls out. So you're going to have your typical business that says, show them a coupon when they walk through the front door. Okay, you make them an app that does that, and then 4 days later they're going to say, wait a minute, we didn't really want everybody to get a coupon when they walk through the front door. Now we need to change this. We want to give certain coupons on certain date. All these questions are going to arise. And so if you don't have this married to, once again, an easily manipulable, you know, manageable screen where you can change this, you're going to be in a situation where you're recompiling this guy's app every 3 days as he figures out what he wants to do. And so you don't want to get into that situation. I don't think. Yeah. So it's exciting. It's exciting. I'm not sure that we are prepared really today to, you know, hey, let's put this in the Buzztouch core. I don't think that makes sense yet. I think we want to see what the developers are going to do with the plugins. We don't want to take away from their opportunity to make something cool and to make a meaningful impact. You know, that kind of stuff.
We have the GeoMobi SDK. They're a partner and they do this as well.
Yeah, there's lots of companies that do only this, and they probably do it really well, and they can probably help a lot of us and, you know, making our apps. I like Thomas and Andy are battling it out about maps. It's just a maps thing, and Andy's like, yeah, maps have been around for a few thousand years. I can't help but think of like this crazy Tom Cruise future world where all of a sudden, you know, weird stuff's happening to me as I walk down the street with my phone in my pocket. I mean, it does get a little alarming. It does get a little bit scary to think, wow, I stood on the curb right here and a cab showed up with nobody in it just to pick me up, and it whisked me away. Right? I mean, these are not too distant off ideas because of this kind of thing. It's crazy. Crazy. So should we put an iBeacon like plan together? Do you want to just kind of keep talking about it, or maybe we should just do a couple more visits on code and kind of do some examples as we move forward? I don't know.
Oh, does anyone know what's in Tim's plugin? What Tim's plugin is going to do?
I do not.
I think Niraj worked on Tim's plugin or was involved in it. He's not here either. Well, so I guess I don't know. Oh well.
It's a bunch of new names on our list here.
Yeah, we do.
It's kind of cool. Nice to meet you guys who I haven't met yet. I wonder how many people on this list are going to be in Vegas next 3 Saturdays from now. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, there's one. I'll be there. David will be there. Sue will be there. Joe, are you going to make Saturday or not at all?
Oh, I have you muted. Sorry, Joe. If people don't mute themselves, no, you muted yourself, Joe. Not my fault this time.
I'm not sure I'll parade the Android shirt, but I could parade the Android shirt.
I still don't have you.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Can't
Oh
hear
well. No, I wasn't sure if he was going to make Saturday night. I think it would be great if he did, but I understand if he doesn't. It's hard, long ways. Makes sense.
you.
Barry's got his hand up. How do we unmute Barry?
Oh, sorry, Barry. Let me see.
No, I did that. I muted me.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Can you show your
I had my
webpage?
hand up. You asked who was going to Vegas. I put my hand up.
Don't you live next door or whatever?
About 5 hours.
Yeah, okay. A lot of you guys are close. I'm going to drive. I'm about 11 hours, 10 or 11 hours. I'm going to be there all week though, so I'm just going to take the car and burn across the desert. And there's a little bit of speculation. I'm not sure. Miguel's in our meeting. There's a little bit of speculation. Miguel, Joe's got a maybe. Cool. I wasn't sure about that. Awesome. That's great. Miguel might ride back with me to Monterey. We were talking about that. That would be kind of cool. I might have to bring a bigger car. I'm not sure. That might be kind of neat. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be super casual on Saturday. We're just going to talk about some cool stuff, hang out, do the whole St. Louis thing like we did last year all over again, which is going to be awesome. Which is kind of cool. I don't have any more iBeacon stuff. Should I share this document, Sue? What should I put it in the? I'll put it in the how-tos.
Oh, whatever you prefer. I can either the how-tos or I can send out an email to this distribution group. Whatever.
Yeah, and it's not even that sophisticated. Just do a Google search, CL Beacon example. There's a bunch of them. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
The only difference between this and those is I've got it all on one page. So not a big deal there. I want to see, here's one. Does anybody know of any popular apps right now, popular apps that lots of us have that are using iBeacon?
No.
Andy's saying it's a race for who puts up a crap iBeacon plugin. That's awesome. whatever crap means.
Oh, Square.
Square, yeah. Okay. Square's using it. Awesome. Yeah, he's saying copy the text file I share with everybody and turn it into a plugin. That's laughs.
Well, couple next steps for people. One might be if you're interested in education, iBeacons for Education. We do have this Buzztouch Educators group. It's kind of a slow path because we only meet monthly, but let me know if you'd like to be on that distribution list. That'd be one thing you could do to participate. Another is I may be starting this group. I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of seeing. I just want to make sure Tim has the supporting needs to do the testing for iBeacon, and so we saw Brian and Tim and I, and then a few other people who showed interest in the past. We haven't met yet, but I kind of volunteered to set up this little group so we can actually see if we can see what's going on with Tim's plugin and see how we can get that moving faster. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I can add you to that distribution group too. If that one's you have to let me share your email with the group though, because it's a group discussion group, so it's not a private email list.
I know what I want to know. David, are you muted, Mr. David?
Oh, I muted you, David, because you didn't mute yourself. There you go.
Mr. Fancy Shirt and Haircut. Where the heck are you? Where are you?
In my one-room office.
Are you back in Southern California?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. You were last time we talked. David cruised up to Monterey. David and Sam had a good time, kind of hung out for a few days, and he was at large when he left. I didn't know where he landed. He might have been, back east.
No, we're back. We're back by now. Yeah.
No, I know. I figured, but I didn't know where back was. You weren't very clear about where you were headed. I thought maybe you were going on north or going to Canada or who knows.
See,
I'm still not sure.
I'm going to turn off the recording since it seems like we're kind of winding down discussion here. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to say for the recording?
Yeah, we're just getting social now. I'm done with all.
Go. There you go.
All right. Sorry, I'm Chris from GeoMobi. I'm jumping in there. We just partnered with Buzztouch a few months ago, and we're doing indoor outdoor geofencing. You can have a look at the website. I'm just putting in there geomobi.com. So we're based in Australia. As you can hear, I'm not Australian. I've got a thick French accent. And it's 4 a.m. So yeah, it's very interesting. In the iBeacons, we've been playing with iBeacons for quite a while. There's a few suppliers around, Radius Networks, Estimotes, Contact in Poland. We've got Gimbal as well. You've got a new Apple iBeacon certification program. We got a few guys jumping in there. So we managed actually to make it working on Android. As I said, the latest version of Android from the version 4.3, which is Jelly Bean, it's got the BLE support. That means you can listen to the iBeacons, but it doesn't understand iBeacons because iBeacons is a layer on the top of the Bluetooth Low Energy protocol. So in order to understand that, you need to listen to the advertisement packet and understand the UUID major and minor. So once you get that, you get the profile of the iBeacon. So if you can have a look at on our website, we've got a blog as well, and we explain a little bit about iBeacons and how you can use it with Android. The main issue we're having at the moment is the deviation. That means how can you accurately get the distance from the beacon in an environment where actually the signal is bouncing pretty much everywhere on the walls. It doesn't go through people because it's full of water. It's bouncing on the windows and everything. So it's no one really got it right, and that's the reason why iOS natively have only 3 levels, like the near, intermediate, which is actually less than 50 centimeters, 50 to something like 4 meters, and then 4 meters to 50 meters, which is the range of the iBeacon. So what we've done with Android, exactly what we've done with the geofencing, we're not using the native geofencing SDK. We just build our own algorithms in the cloud for several reasons, for performances reasons. We found out actually currently when you want to try using geofencing, it's just sucking up your battery a lot. So what we're doing, we just split all of that. We've got a very lightweight SDK that sits in the background of your app, and all the algorithm, all the processing stuff is done in the cloud. And we're doing exactly the same now with the iBeacons. So what we do for Android, we build our own classes, our own Java classes on the top of that, like reduced networks. And what we do as well, we try to estimate to try to have better accuracy within at least the 5 first meters from the beacon. And we offer not only 3 levels of range, but actually 5 or 6. Like we try from 0 to 50 centimeters, 50 centimeters to 1 meter, 1 to 2, 3 meters, 3 to 5 meters, something like that. So, and we can achieve that with two ways. And really, no one's going to get it right until you've got an application or you've got some sort of algorithm that can calculate the path loss of your environment. Because it's quite different. So you've got constants basically that just disturb a little bit the signals. But if you understand these constants, then you can be very accurate in the indoor environment. It's totally different if you're in an home office, if you're in a shopping mall, if you're in a stadium. So what we're trying to do here is to find the best way for our users to calibrate the iBeacon. It's not really calibrating iBeacons, it's calibrating the mobile phones to get a better accuracy of the signal in order to give a better, more different levels, not only 3 levels that natively the iOS SDK gives us. So basically nothing's going to be done in the phone, but sent to the server, and the server, once you get the constants right, depending on your environment, will be able actually to send back the right accuracy and the right distance of the beacon. It's a lot of fun at the moment. What we found as well with iBeacon, they're not all identical. We found that Estimote's quite good. We found that Stick and Find beacon is quite right. What you can do with the Estimote, for instance, compared to the others, is you can pair the beacon with the Estimote application, and you can change the text power, you can change the major and minor, you can change a lot of different things. Contact, which is another Polish supplier, there's a few things they still need to do. The main issue they're having is actually with the battery level. Estimote and Contact said it can be up to 2 years battery, but it's not right. It's not true. It's not what we've learned and what we could say.
What they say is different.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's all a bit different. In Radius Networks, they got a fun little iBeacon. It's basically a USB beacon, or you plug on your computer and it runs like that. So basically, if you got a shop and you've got a computer or a router or anything with got a USB in there, a USB plug in there, you just plug it and leave it, and you get rid of all the battery issues.
Cool.
So yeah,
thanks a bunch for showing up, Chris. It's nice to have you in our little hangout. We try to get together. Susan does a really good job of getting us together every couple of weeks, and this is exactly the kind of thing we appreciate.
we had a few chat with Susan a few days ago. So and the iBeacon discussions today is perfect for us because what we wanted to do is to run a webinar next week. Sorry, Susan, I have to reply to you probably tomorrow or today's. Sorry, today. Um, yeah, so what we're going to do is just walk you through the Android version, for instance. Let just download very basic project on Buzztouch on Android and show you how to integrate our SDK and
Oh,
to make it
wow,
work.
great.
So you need about 20 minutes to make it working on the Buzztouch project, really. So it's very, very, very easy. And we've got a dashboard because the icon is fantastic. It's just proximity based, exactly what you say. You can use it in stadiums, sporting events. We've got clients doing that in the shopping malls. We've got clients doing that in doing festivals in Perth. Um, it's great. The most important thing with the iBeacon is learning about your users' habits and behavior. So if you're not collecting any data of your beacons, is a bit useless for the reasons why when we talk to the users, you need to provide a new user experience and a very relevant notification. So we're using iBeacons to send notifications. It's not spam. It's actually highly targeted messaging, highly targeted notifications. And we can do that by learning from our users' habits. So how much time they spend in this aisle of the shopping mall, how much time when they enter the shopping mall, are they more going to the left or to the right? How much time they spend in a McDonald's things, blah, blah, blah. So all the data we're getting, they're totally anonymized from our side. We're trying to get a customer's data profile. We're building customer data profiles. So we're using this profile to segment the audience. Once you understand what they want, because the beacon is proximity based, but it's in real time. So if you understand where your users are and what they want, and you can send a message at the right time, the right place to exactly the right people. Not everyone, but just the people that really need to receive this message. So you can segment when people enter the shopping mall. You set up a microfence, what we call a microfence indoor. To send a specific message to male users or female users, or the ones that made a more than $50 purchase last week. Well, this is exactly what you want to do. If you're not relevant, if you're not providing a value to the end users, the data you're collecting and the whole system of the whole use of iBeacon is useless. No, if you suck the battery as well, if you drain the battery, so you're going to install the app, and no, you will never go to install it again. So the second part is the battery drain. Scanning for iBeacons is very power consuming, especially on Android. It's a little bit better on iOS because they made a lot of testing and they've got the hardware. They control pretty much everything on the iOS from the hardware point of view, so it's a little bit better on iOS. But Android, like it sucks really. It's gonna get better.
Cool.
Did you find a
I
date?
think it's gonna get better.
Did you find a day for the training next week yet? Once you get a date, let me know, and then I'll push out an email to this developer group.
I'll let you know today. It's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
be
cool.
my day. So
Monday?
probably.
Okay.
I don't know yet. I need to talk to my CTO.
Okay. All right.
And I'll let you know, but definitely today.
Yeah. Let me know when that gets done, and I'll push that out. Well, you can do your own forum post if you want, but I'll get that in the events and webinars, and then I'll also push out an email to. There's about 100 people, almost 100 people on this developer distribution list. That would probably be your
Yeah.
best audience. It kind of pushes it out versus the forum post.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you know definitely today. And yeah, Andy is gonna be 4 a.m. not 5. Oh, look at that.